This is
The Science Lens,
the Faculty of Science podcast at the University of Manitoba. Together, let's discover the unknown and invent the future. Hello, I'm your host, Kimia Shatkami, Faculty of Science Digital Content and Communications Lead, and a proud UM alum with a master's in computer science. In each episode, we take a closer look at the research, innovation, student experience, and the people who shape the future of science right here at the University of Manitoba. Today's episode is all about change and the fear that comes with it. Sometimes we have to face our fears head on, talk about it out in the open, not to just find solutions that are different for every person, but to also find community around it. And that can look different for every individual, which is why we're joined today with our guests and our co-host, Taylor Owen. Taylor is an academic advisor at the Faculty of Science. She joined UM as a student in 2010 and graduated with a BA in psychology in 2015. She then started working at the university immediately after that in different departments, such as the Registrar's Office, and joined the Faculty of Science in 2022. She started advising students in 2024. Taylor, thank you so much for being here. Would you like to introduce today's guest to our listeners?
Absolutely. So our first guest is Xinli Wang. She teaches entry-level math courses at the University of Manitoba. Her teaching career in Canada began in 2016 after she moved here from Singapore. She's passionate about utilizing open educational resources and open educational practices in her teaching. Xinli also engages in educational research to incorporate evidence-based teaching methods in her classrooms. Currently, her primary interests include alternative grading, learning community, and active learning in large classes. And she enjoys hiking, drumming, and reading when she has free time.
Thank you.
We're also joined by Elayna Paddock Thiessen, who is a genetics honors student in their final term of study in the Faculty of Science. They have been a student in science since 2019 with academic interests in healthcare equity and disability justice. Elayna is involved in the UM science community as one of the co-presidents of the Biology Undergraduate Students Association, or BUGS, and hopes to pursue a career in genetic counseling after graduation. And outside of school, they enjoy fiber arts and fantasy novels.
We have very cool guests.
We do.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So for our first question, I want to start with the very beginning. Why did you choose science? How did you end up in science? Because sometimes I know it's like a set of things that happens and all of a sudden you're in science. So what happened? And Xinli, do you want to go first?
Sure. I think for me, it's mostly because of curiosity, of course, for probably anybody who steps into science eventually. And a few very good math teachers I had when I was young, growing up. One of my middle school math teachers was really passionate about teaching, and he cared a lot about all of us very deeply. Because of him, I got interested in mathematics. And I thought, well, in fact, mathematics was actually never my strong subject compared with others, but I fell in love with it. And when I started my undergraduate program, I chose applied math, and I learned both mathematics and computer science. So I got to explore many different branches in mathematics and how some mathematical theories are being applied in computer science. And then I, in fact, studied a PhD program right after my undergraduate. Mm-hmm. My PhD advisor was the main reason I stayed on after my graduation. He was the most supportive advisor you can imagine. And I really enjoyed my time studying math with him. We spent about 4 years during my PhD. And after I graduated, I decided this is what I want to do.
That is so lovely. Oh, that's such a good story. Okay. Elayna, do you want to also tell us?
Yeah. So, growing up, I actually never thought I was going to end up in science. Like from a young age, I always wanted to be a teacher, especially in like English or language arts. So it was actually not until my later years of high school where I entered into a biology classroom. And I mean, I guess I'd always enjoyed learning how things work, how things tick. I shout out the show How It's Made. That was my favorite thing growing up. So that did carry through, but then starting to learn about the human body and the ways that the human body works was really fascinating. And I had a very supportive grade 11 and grade 12 biology teacher that really encouraged that love of science, and also was surrounded by a community that had that interest and love of science in a way that I hadn't been previously in my education. So I think all of those things really combined to push me into science. So I applied direct entry to the Faculty of Science here at U of M and have been in the faculty ever since, even though, there's been some changes in career trajectory throughout, but have always, still kind of held on to that interest in what makes us tick, how the body functions, and the ways in which that can go wrong or go well. And that's kind of driven me into pursuing healthcare as a discipline for my future as well.
I love that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yep. I wanted to also ask you, Taylor, how did you end up in the Faculty of Science?
That's a great question. So when I first came to university, it was because that was just what you did. Like, you just went to school, you got a degree, and then you went on your merry way. I was always a person that struggled with school. So for me to actually get my degree was a huge thing. And then, it's the familiarity for me. So I worked as a student in the registrar's office. I continued to work in the registrar's office after I graduated. And then one of my coworkers actually ended up going to science and was raving about how good the faculty was and how supportive they are. And I was like, that sounds like fun. I want to go there too. So that's how I ended up over here. And I've enjoyed almost every minute of it.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah.
For me, it was, I think I wanted to go into just literature. And then I was like, but this is really fun. And it's kind of scratching my brain in a good way. And I loved math. I loved physics. I loved math. And that's how I ended up in computer science. But I loved that aspect of solving a problem.
Mhm.
But then also the collaboration aspect of it was really fun. Yeah.
When was the first time that you faced a challenge in your science journey, and what did you have to change to overcome that? So that could be your mindset, career trajectory, academic changes, habits.
Yeah. So for me, the first thing that comes to mind is, of course, the pandemic. I started my degree in 2019. So just that first 8 months, I was here on campus. I was actually living on campus at the time in dorms. And then everything changed. And so I think everybody was in a state of change, a state of flux, and it really did bring into question kind of, what my goals were and what I wanted to do with my career. Because as I have mentioned in the first question, I think I had this interest in biology, but a lot of my initial career trajectory, much like a lot of people that come into the Faculty of Science, I was thinking that I wanted to be a physician and go into med school. And I think some of that was that community that I was surrounded by. That was kind of the goal of a lot of my peers as well. Mm-hmm. And so the pandemic actually, in many ways, though it was very challenging, gave me time to be away from that community, which, as I said, was challenging, but also kind of gave a lot of time to reflect and to sit with myself and say, is this what I want? Mm-hmm. Or is this what other people around me want? And I think I came to find that my goals, though I had this interest and this real drive to look towards healthcare and look towards the ways we could better healthcare, but my lifestyle and the things that I wanted were not reflected in the job of a physician. And having all that time to myself, I think I really realized that I want a job that I can come home and not have to bring home with mm-hmm. me. And I think that was a big part of that time that we had to slow down during lockdowns, that really altered, I think, mostly the mindset there. My degree didn't change necessarily, but a lot of my goals kind of did. And I was left for a while with, okay, I still have this interest in healthcare, but I don't know where I'm going to end up. Mm-hmm. And so I actually took some time off of school at that time and did a healthcare aid program so I could see if I, even enjoyed working in this space whatsoever. And there was a real need for those positions at the time. And so I think that was really valuable experience, that I had hands-on experience in this field. And it really did kind of enforce that, yes, I think this is where I want to be, just not in the way that I originally imagined. So I think that change, that pause was really important mm-hmm. for me, and being able to reflect on all of those values and what comes into making those big life decisions.
Wow. Thank you.
Thank you.
Xinli, did you want me to repeat the question?
No. I'm good. Okay. So the first time I faced a real challenge in my math learning journey would be the first 2 years when I started my PhD program. I actually moved to a foreign country to do my study. And I think it's the cultural shock and the language barrier that were pretty difficult for me to overcome. And it's probably true for most international students who are studying here. You know, when you leave what you're familiar with, your family, your old friends, and the system that you're comfortable with, it's going to be a pretty big challenge for anybody. For me, there's an additional layer to that because when I was in undergraduate, I did a degree in both mathematics and computer science. That also means that I did not spend whole 4 years on doing mathematics. So comparing with my peers who are also in the same PhD program, I did not have a strong foundational knowledge. So I struggled a lot in the first and second year. I need to catch up. And in the first semester, when I was sitting in the classroom, I was totally lost. I had no idea what my professor was talking about. And so I have to figure out ways to catch up, to make it. So I turned to my peers, my friends, all of whom were very, very supportive. So they helped a lot, definitely, and my supervisor. So it's probably not a typical supervisor-student relationship that we had because he actually did spend a lot of time with me in the first 2 years. I believe for most PhD students here, when they're doing their coursework, they don't actually interact with their supervisors on such a regular basis. But I got really, really lucky. So he was helping me with my coursework. He was giving me guidelines of what you should do, what you should read, what should you work on in order to catch up. That helped tremendously. And he also helped me with my English. He's originally from Philadelphia, and he moved to Singapore around the same time with me. So we actually both studied kind of out live in Singapore in 2008, and he must have felt some of the struggles that I'm going through, which I'm eternally grateful for. Yeah, and also it's because of my own background. So I was born in a very remote village in northern part of China. I was the first person to go to university in my whole family. I was the first person in my whole village who's going to a foreign country to do a PhD program. Like all of this would be unimaginable for most of my folks back home. So of course, nobody in my immediate family would have any idea whatsoever of what I should do and what could help me. So, but eventually, I think I was able to make it thanks to my friends, my peers, and my supervisor. And most of my friends from that time, they are also faculty members now in different universities, different countries. We're still in touch. And now we talk about research and teaching most of the time when we can get together, most of the time over Zoom.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And I also did a lot of self-study during that time, those 2 years. And I actually took a few online courses with a couple of professors from Stanford University. They have open course even back then. So I think that journey kind of planted a seed in me so that later on, I actually did spend a lot of time learning about open education resource and developing open book myself. Is because I have benefited from that. And I see the value in it. I mean, can you imagine that you can learn from the best mathematicians and professors for free online? That would be
Incredible.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
That is so nice. I think I went through both of those challenges, kind of a mix when I moved here from my master's. Because I moved here 2019, so best time to move abroad during a pandemic. I moved here right before it, and so I went through both. I remember like going to one of my profs and being like, I don't know. I've never not had enough time to finish a paper. And then I remember he looked at me and was like, is this your first winter here? And I was like, well, I've had winters, but this is different. This is -30. So I think that's like one of the first things I also experienced of like new culture, new everything. And also going through a degree where a lot of people expect you to end up in big tech companies or big R&D companies or go on to do a PhD. And I was like, I really, really enjoy the aspect of research that is about writing about the science. I really love talking about the science. I like simplifying this for a general audience. And I'm really glad I stuck with science communication and like that passion of mine. But to get through that, I had to like have honest conversations also with myself that, yeah, this is what everybody else expects me of. But is this same thing? Is this something that's gonna fit my lifestyle and what I imagine myself to do? And same thing, I had really great professors who supported me. I remember them being like, this is your first winter. Your body's going through a lot. Give yourself time. This is how you can manage this paper. Don't worry about the rest. So yeah, I think the support and kind of like being honest with myself really helped. What about you, Taylor?
That's a great question. I guess like for me, when the pandemic hit, the common theme here, I was working from home and I was working in the registrar's office and I wasn't doing like student facing things. I was doing more like analytical stuff on the sides. And I think I had to have tough conversations with myself. Like, do I want to be doing this for the rest of my life? Like, I have no contact with students. I'm not helping anybody. And I realized that I wanted to help. And I do that through advising now. So I'm able to help students start like from the very beginning and watch them go all the way to the end. And it's very fulfilling.
That is so nice to hear. And I love our advising team and how much you guys help everybody.
Yeah, we have a pretty great team.
I know students appreciate it a lot too. Now we get into the fear aspect of change. So what was the scariest part about that change that we all just talked about? And why do you think it was necessary to make that change and make that decision? Elayna, do you want to go first again?
Yeah, sure. That's, I think something that we've all kind of talked around is how for many people, myself included, I think fear of change is fear of difference, fear of being not like everybody else, fear of stepping outside of those boundaries. I know for me, a lot of my fears, though I was maybe giving up on what I thought was a dream of going to med school, I think most of my fears were about, oh, I'm diverging from this 4-year degree track and I'm not going to get there in time. I'm not going to get there in the same amount of years as all of my peers. And I think that that comparison aspect was really the real fear for me, not necessarily the unknown of what am I going to do next. It's why am I not finishing in the same amount of years as everyone around me? And I think that was what I really did need to wrestle with and to come to be okay with for myself, and to realize that even though my pathway hasn't looked the same as other people in my life, that I have gained so much from the experiences that I have found along the way. And I think too, you mentioned like we in science, we're in a community that is pretty high achieving, and there are these expectations of a certain style of work coming out of these degrees, where I do think that even though that those careers are, admirable and great for many people, I think that it is those people that are thinking differently, that are doing things outside of the box, that are really contributing to science in a way that is engaging, in a way that brings people in. And so I think that bringing the experience that I have had into my science education has made me feel much more engaged than I did previously, where I was just kind of going through the motions, right? So being able to accept those differences, being able to celebrate them, and walking into a science education with that in mind in the last few years of my degree, rather than the first few, has really changed the experience wholeheartedly for me. And I think that that's the real crux of the question, what was the scariest part of that change? It was that I didn't know if standing out was going to make it more difficult for me. I didn't know if that was going to, alter my trajectory in a way that I was never going to get here, where I'm going to graduate in a few months, at least hopefully, knock on wood, right? So I think that change was so necessary, because it has brought me to the more confident, more outgoing, more understanding person that I am now, where I can see that, everyone around me is going through all of the things that they're going through, and they, deserve that space as well. And we shouldn't, have this expectation of everyone to get through their degree in 4 years and get to the next step and the next step. There's time in there, and we all have that time. So yeah.
That's beautiful.
It is.
It's a common theme with students that I see, that there's this invisible timeline, and that my friends are they're further ahead than me, but what's the rush? It's still going to be there when you get to the end. It's just taking you a little bit longer, and that's okay. We want you to enjoy it, not be stressed out and hating your life for your whole degree, right? So yeah, that's something that we see a lot of too.
Mm-hmm. What about you?
For me, I think the scariest part of the change is not knowing whether what I do is enough. Because I didn't have anyone to turn to ask for advice about how to survive a PhD in mathematics. And so at that moment, I guess I had to trust others that I turned to, and I had to ask for help. In general, I believe for most of us, asking for help is really hard.
Yep.
And trusting ourselves is really hard.
Yep.
So I had to do that in order to survive the program. And I made it.
Yay.
And I guess it's necessary, because otherwise I wouldn't be here today. But also, those 2 years taught me a lot about who I am and what I can do. And I doubt myself a bit less, because now that I know I can overcome these difficult times, I could probably do other things if I set my mind to. Yeah.
Oh, that's such a good outcome. I love that.
Thank you.
What about you, Taylor?
What was the scariest part about change? I think for me, when I left the registrar's office and came over to science, it was that I had zero advising experience. I had zero, I didn't know anything about the programs. There's 52 programs, and
That's a lot.
my colleagues that I'm working alongside can spew out all of this stuff. And I'm like, how do you know all of that though? So I think for me, it was the fear of not living up to an expectation that I had envisioned for myself, which I think a lot of us experience. But it's necessary to get outside of your comfort zone too. That helps you grow as a human and learn more about yourself and who you want to be, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I had a very tangible fear of study permit. I had the tangible fear of what's going to happen with pandemic. Are our studies going to go on pause? Am I going to be able to complete my degree in time? Because it was mentally draining as well. And so you wouldn't be performing at your studies the way you expected yourself to, or you used to. And so I had this very tangible fear of a date of I kind of need to graduate by that. And then you have to apply. It's the asking for help. It's asking for support, because I'm the first person in my family to go abroad to study. And so I don't have anybody back home to turn to and be like, how did you do it? And so I had to go up to people that I've never met and be like, so how do you extend this? Are we going to get an extension? There was a lot of phone calls and a lot of asking people around, but it's that aspect of asking for help that's a little bit scary. But I think it was very necessary. It was very necessary for me to ask those questions, get those answers, and understand that there was an extension and it wasn't the end of my degree. But yeah, sometimes those changes are not necessarily affordable for everybody. So you have to kind of pick and choose what you change and what you stick with. but I think it was very necessary for me to kind of finish my degree in a way that was still enjoyable.
Okay. The fourth question is, why should students consider change, and what can that look like for different students? Xinli, do you want to go first?
Sure. Well, I do math. So whether you realize or not, the only constant in our life is change. Well, you may sometimes feel your life suddenly becomes uncertain when dealing with unfamiliar changes. I think you can think of these as highways that will eventually lead you to a new world. So even though you may not have a map with you, trust yourself, ask for help, and you will discover something beautiful by the end of your journey. And you probably will discover a new version of you, which is, probably the most valuable part of going through such journeys. It is hard for most of us to deal with changes. But I think with enough help and guidance and a supportive community, you can make it. Trust yourself that you can make it. Yeah.
I love that. Elayna?
Yeah, I want to speak a little bit to how difficult that can be, as you just mentioned. I think that we live in a world and a culture that doesn't really like change in many ways. I think, even though I also agree that the only thing that we have is change, I think especially as we become more connected, we have more, presence in our internet spaces, like you are documenting yourself in a certain way, which makes it even more difficult to change because everybody sees a certain part of you that you want to kind of curate. And I think that's really natural. But I do think it can make us a little bit complacent. We want to continue having that specific image of ourselves. But I think that there is a lot of freedom in attempting to break out of those images. And because it puts us in a place where we are forced to change and forced to grow. And I think that is the ultimate outcome, as we've kind of all alluded to, of change. Is it allows for growth. It allows for you to come into new understandings of yourself, come into new understandings of each other and the world. And I think that is also a really fundamental part of science, is coming to a new understanding of the world around us, coming to a new understanding of each other in a way that, of course, is methodical and, institutional in some ways. But I think that welcoming of change is really a really wonderful part of science and the career that we are all kind of invested in, is trying to find the ways in which we can change our understanding of the world. And I think that starts with being able and being open to changing your understanding of yourself.
Thank you.
Those are so nice takeaways.
They are.
So much wisdom. I think coming out of computer science, going into science communication, one of the fears I had was, what if I'm like letting go of all the skills I've learned and I'm putting them here and then I'm starting something from scratch. I think that could be one of the things that kind of pushes students away from change, or like fearing that if they're changing their major or anything, that they're kind of leaving things behind. One of the things I've learned, as you say, that you like come out a different version of yourself. One of the things I've learned is that none of the things you've learned are just put aside. Like it is all interconnected, whether you see it in the first year of that change or in the 10th year of that change. You carry a lot of everything you've learned with yourself. Because of computer science, my brain is just altered and I just think differently. I problem solve differently and I approach problems differently than some of my peers. And I think that's why I think it's very, very necessary to, even if you're not forced to consciously make changes, to push yourself a little bit, because experiencing all of these different things will just like shape your experience differently.
I would agree with that.
What about you,
I think, like you mentioned, like none of those skills that you have disappear. Like they don't disappear. You just use them in different ways, I think. We have a lot of students come through our office who are changing programs and panicking, like, well, what about all of this? And it's like, well, that's gonna, like, that will help you in the future. You may not see it right now. Like you said, first year, 10th year, like it will help. And people change and change their minds all the time. You're never stuck with anything. So that can look different for students, for us, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was lovely. We're going to go into rapid fire questions. Now, these are questions that I like because it kind of puts people into a place where they have to kind of choose and just say the most important thing and just move on with their answers. But let's just
I have a long
say
list.
the first thing.
I can do yours if you want.
Say the first thing that comes to your mind. So, what would you change about the campus?
The first thing I thought of was I wish we had more affordable food options on campus. I come from a $5 footlong era, not a $7.50 6-inch era.
Right.
So that's what I'm wishing for personally.
I think I would like to have more lounge areas so people could just hang out. It's very difficult for us to have those spontaneous conversations if there's no physical space for us to just sit down and talk.
Yeah. I'm on board with both of those, but also I think accessibility is a huge thing. Like, these are old buildings. People that have different needs aren't able to move around as well as we are.
Absolutely. And I would say I would like to have like more outdoor picnicky type of areas where you can just like have your lunch and relax. Yeah. Take it away.
When change feels overwhelming, what grounds you? Xinli?
Hiking. I would love. I always enjoy time in the nature. I could just sit by the lake for half a day, for a day with my book. I would be able to find my peace.
Oh, that's so lovely.
Yeah, I would a little bit opposite than that, but I am a talker. I like to talk through everything. I want to talk about every decision over and over again. So definitely my community and my friends who I'm able to kind of talk through those decisions with, I think is the biggest grounding factor.
It depends on what kind of overwhelm it is. Like, I would either go to like dancing, or I would be like, let's craft and just like sit down and not just like get my hands busy with like fun materials so that I don't have to think about anything else.
I think it's the same for me. Like, if I need to talk it out, I'll talk with my partner about it. But other times just taking like 5 minutes to color a picture and be like a kid again is kind of brings me back.
And your paintings are really fun. I have one in my office. Okay, next one. And I think we touched on this a little bit, but early bird or night owl? And did university change that?
I'm definitely more of a night owl, but I don't think university has changed that. I've always been this way. Even from when I was a really young kid, loved staying up really late. So
Early bird. Absolutely. I'm up before 6 a.m. every day. And I got that from probably my childhood life experience, because my parents work on a farm and we're always up before the sun rises. And that stayed with me.
I think I would like to be an early bird, but I am a night owl, and that the university did not change that.
Yeah, I'm a night owl, and I was since I was a kid. I feel like a lot of magic happens after 12. I don't know why. University didn't change that. Work did. I'm just tired at night. Yeah. I can't. And aging. Anyway, so planner, sticker notes, or chaos? Which one?
I mean, if I'm going to be honest with you, it's chaos. But I do love my planner also. Do I use it to its fullest potential? No. But it's fun to put stickers in also.
Very much so.
Yeah.
I love that.
I have 3 different planners. I have a physical one in my office. I have a physical one at home, and I have my phone. I fully use my calendar, plan everything. You can see I have events in July and August this year.
Teach us your ways, please.
I'm kind of like that. I put like every life thing into my calendar, but I love the idea of a planner, but like they just collect dust. They look pretty. That's
the idea of it is pretty.
Yes.
Okay, good.
It's more of an art project.
Yes,
than a planner
exactly.
In my world.
Some doodles and
It depends. If it's work, I'm very organized. Planner, sticky notes,
Step by
calendar,
step.
everything. When it comes to like just everything outside of work, it really depends. I try to like keep up with the calendar just because I forget things. But other than that, yeah, it's a mix of chaos and sticky notes, I'd say. Yeah. I
Love it.
don't take it too hard.
Last question for you guys. What's one thing that you wish first year students knew about change? That's a good one.
That's a good one. This is not a rapid fire question.
Sorry.
She better had that.
Sorry.
I think my answer would be I wish that first year students knew that change was a lot easier than you think. Especially, I mean, obviously there's complications, but within your faculty, like you can switch your major at a drop of a hat realistically. Yep. So I think that, yeah, I wish that first year students knew that it wasn't as daunting of a task as it seems.
I wish they knew that they could ask for help. Yeah. There's tons of resources on campus that they can turn to when they are dealing with difficult time, either academically or in their life. And I feel many of our students are not aware or maybe are too afraid to approach help.
Yeah.
But don't be. Most of us would love to help you to succeed. That's why we're here.
Yeah.
We have those ask me buttons
yes,
on
we
the
do.
on the first week.
We do.
Always. It's like, just ask me.
Yep, that's what we're here for. One thing I would want first year students to know is that change is going to happen. Like you don't get a say in it. It will happen at some point. And I think you just need to be open to it and embrace it and kind of ride the wave and come out on the other side and see what happened.
And to kind of build up on that, I also wish they knew that everybody is going through change and that they're not alone in experiencing it. Just like most people won't necessarily sit down and talk about it and have a whole podcast episode. But it's unavoidable.
Yeah.
It's there.
It's there.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's possible, right? I think we live in a world in which, you know, we hope for some change also, like
yes.
in a broader way. And I think that holding on to the fact that that change is possible, it takes work, but it is possible, and we can get there to a place where we feel like we have a better, you know, world to live in with everybody.
Definitely. Well, that's a wrap. Thank you so much. This was a wonderful conversation. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Taylor, would you like to share your favorite part?
I think my favorite part was, especially with you two, like you both had very influential people helping you. Your PhD, what are they called? Advisor. Yes, your PhD advisor. Like that was a huge step in you becoming who you are today.
Absolutely.
And for you, it was your biology teachers in high school. And like, I think everybody has at least one person that helped contribute to that change and be that support system that you needed. Yeah, it was just interesting to see how everyone kind of got to where they are right now.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is fun.
So that's a wrap on episode 4. To our listeners, thank you so much for spending time with us. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, please give us a review. Stay tuned for the upcoming episodes. We have 2 more episodes left in this season that we cannot wait to share with you. Thank you to our guests again for being here with us. Thank you to Taylor for co-hosting with me. And thanks to our colleague, Kevin Pokemon, behind the camera. Until the next episode, remember to discover the unknown and invent the future.